Okay, after a rough Saturday afternoon in Lincoln, Nebraska, and then my rant last night, it's my post-rant rant. Let's get to it.
Is something wrong with me? Something wrong with you? I really wish I knew, wish I knew, wish I knew. I'll give you candy, give you diamonds, give you pills, I'll give you anything you want. $100 bills, I'd even let you watch the shows you want to see.
Okay, so Rutgers loses 14-7 to Nebraska in Lincoln yesterday, and I was not kind in my post-game rant. Here's my post-rant rant. Not feeling any different today. This was a winnable game, a game that we had lots of opportunities, a game that was pretty evenly matched on paper and by the eye test, with each team having its strong points and weak points. And after an inauspicious start, the game played out fairly evenly. We missed a lot of opportunities. So let's get to the nitty-gritty here. 12-0 and a college football playoff berth no longer in the cards. But it's back to the future. Talked about in my rant last night how this reminded me of the 2021 Rutgers team. Defense played well. Offense didn't hold up their end of the bargain. We struggled on offense. The defense played over their head. Surprisingly, it didn't look like that was going to be the way the game was going to flesh out early on. Nebraska made some plays when they had to, and we couldn't. On a day where Wisconsin absolutely pounds Purdue. And I'm going to say it again like I did in my rant last night. Wisconsin is not going to be check the box off in the win column kind of game. It's just not. Their passing game came alive. Their offense came alive for the first time in 2 years. Luke Fickell and Longo have been waiting for that offense to break out, and they did, almost 600 yards yesterday. So don't go into SHI Stadium this week thinking, oh, okay, we'll bounce back and then we'll get an easy win. It's not going to happen. USC loses to Minnesota. What does that mean now for Minnesota? For us. Now, Minnesota's been playing well. Some predicted them to have a bounce back, have a very good year, and they've been playing tough in the first half of most games this year. And then losing the second half. They beat USC. But at least Washington beats Michigan. I watched the fourth quarter of that game. And that kind of, if we had a relative strength index in football, that would be a good win for us. Winning yesterday would have made things much better. But as I said yesterday, I'm going to watch Vanderbilt beat number 1 Alabama. Indiana's cruising to a 6-0 record with a first-year coach. Pitt is undefeated. And we keep relapsing back to the future into old habits. We just can't seem to get over that hub. Nebraska's a good team. They're not an unbeatable team. There were opportunities to be had there, and it was the same combination of head-scratching coaching decisions, situational football and play calling, poor execution on the field, drop passes, another drop pass that would have been a short touchdown. That's 4 in 2 weeks. The stats were very even. We'll go through those to show you how if you can't execute situational football at a time when you need to, you're going to lose. So if we look at the stats, which after I looked at them after the game, I was kind of surprised it was that even, because Nebraska seemed to be controlling the pace of the game. at least in the first half, which was one of my keys for a Rutgers victory. You didn't have to control the ball for the whole game like you did against Virginia Tech, but control the pace, extend the sticks and yard markers, get first downs, and not play from behind. And we saw for the first time this year, and this was another key, how would we respond? You know, we were down 3-0 a couple times this year, but how would we respond down 14-0? We had no sample size of how well we would come back from a multiple score deficit, and we didn't. Nonetheless, Rutgers had 69 plays, Nebraska 70. Time of possession was fairly even. 31 plus minutes for Nebraska, 28 plus for Rutgers. Rutgers actually had more first downs. That was another surprise for me. 18-15. Another surprise, we had more total yards, 264, 261, very even. Yards per play, Rutgers 3.8, Nebraska 3.7. We actually had more yards passing, 184 to 164, and we'll get to the individual games played by the quarterbacks. Actually, one of my keys was doing what we did to Dylan Raiola, and I was wrong about him. He was going to make his plays, although he did make a couple plays that were successful. But overall, we did what we needed to do against him, and we didn't win. Ethan, who was not good yesterday, 15-37, 2 interceptions. Threw the ball into coverage all day long. Dylan Raiola, 14-28 and an interception. Rushing. Nebraska has a so-so rushing game. We held them to less than 100 yards. I guess as we count the sacks, they would have had over 100 yards. But they had 97 yards rushing. We had a grand total of 78 yards. Now, if you told me, a lot of people yesterday, well, if you told me, Rutgers would have blocked a couple punts and we had the ball 9 times in Nebraska's territory, we would have won by 2 touchdowns. I look at our rushing stats, 78 yards. Chalk it up as an L. Kyle Monangai had 64 yards in the first quarter, 14 in the last 3. What happened to the running game? We seem to struggle finding that balance. We get too predictable when we shouldn't get too predictable. We get too cute when we shouldn't get too cute. And situationally, especially on 4th down, we're absolutely horrible. 14 yards in the last 3 quarters. What happened there? You saw some things you might be able to exploit, like that failed fake punt. Here's where we also lost, and this was another key to the game that we just couldn't execute, and it's on 3rd down. You have to throw 4th down there, 4th down in there too. 3rd and 4th down. We were 2 for 14 after being ranked 17th in the country before this game. Nebraska, on the other hand, struggled to get off the field on 3rd down. We couldn't execute. Nebraska was 7 for 19. Not a hell of a lot better, but in the first half when they took the 14-0 lead, they were very good. 3rd quarter, Nebraska struggled to stay on the field offensively. But not being able to execute on 3rd down and 4th down, which, by the way, we were 2 of 6. Nebraska, who was not very good on 4th down, 3 for 3. Controlling the pace of the game was important. If we talked about this when we looked at Washington and people looked at the box score, how could you win that game? But we did kind of control the pace of the game. Washington was behind all game. We ran the ball pretty well. You didn't get the sense that Washington was just blowing us off the ball up and down the field all game. And, maybe they had turnovers that prevented them from scoring. We kind of had the pace of this game. We're not that team that's going to have 450 yards and light up the scoreboard, at least not against Big Ten teams and legitimate competition. Didn't control the pace of the game. After the first quarter, we couldn't run the ball. By the way, where was Sam? I don't know what the issue is with it. He needs to get more carries. I don't know if you know what Coach Shiano says. They kind of know how to rotate the backs in, and maybe it's situational to the game. Kyle needs to get more. Sam needs to get more touches. Nonetheless, we didn't control the pace of the game because we weren't running effectively enough. After the first quarter, we were 7-0 in the first quarter. We probably should have been at least 7-6. Botched field goal attempt or botched fake field goal. And then Jai Patel had plenty of distance on that 52-yarder and hit the crossbar. Part of not being able to control the pace of the game, Ethan just wasn't good, and he just looked off all game. Part of that was due to how active Nebraska's front was, and they were. It just seemed like Ethan was under duress a lot of the game, had to get rid of the ball quickly. Another one of my keys to the game that didn't happen was that Ethan was going to have to make a play. He was going to have to make a play. And he just couldn't make that play. He was not good. Yeah, and the early part of the fourth quarter, starting to get into a rhythm a little bit. We mounted a comeback, 14-7. He threw into coverage all game. The pass before that fake punt, or fake field goal, I have no idea where he was throwing the ball. He was just throwing into a mass of players that pass had no chance, like several other passes. That fourth down play in the second half from like the 2-yard line when we had 4 shots from the 2-yard line and the Kyle Monangai touchdown that wasn't a touchdown, and we'll get to that in a minute. Another incompletion in Nebraska territory that should have been Ethan could have had 3 or 4 picks yesterday. That would have been the Ethan that people were talking about. Was not good. Yes, I know Filter was out, but if we lose one guy who missed all of last year, by the way, but by the way, where's Shedrick Rhodes? Coach after the game said Taj White did a good job, fought all game. I got to have a little something. I'm getting annoyed all over again just thinking about it. One of the things about this year that we talked about all during the summer is how we now have the depth on paper, in theory, to be a Big Ten program. You lose Felter and your offensive line falls apart. We got to think about a different rotation. But what are we talking about here? The O-line was not great. They allowed pressure. 4 sacks. We just doubled our sack total for the year. That being said, we still had opportunities, and this is what separates a middling program from a very good program. When you don't play your best, but you play well situationally, you win games. Even against Washington, we didn't play poorly. We got, we had some lapses on defense. But it wasn't like, oh my God, we played it. We made a lot of mistakes. We were relatively mistake-free. Yesterday, only 4 penalties. That's a good job. No fumbles. We're not fumbling them. One of my keys was, in addition to Ethan having to make a play yesterday, this couldn't be that game where he's thrown into traffic and getting picked off, because this was going to be a nip and tuck game between two teams that are pretty well matched. Though Nebraska is probably a little more talented and has a little more size to them. This couldn't be that game where Ethan shits the bed, and he did. We spread the ball around offensively to the wide receivers, like seeing that they're not getting enough touches. Again, Dymere Miller, just 2 catches. 35 yards. He's averaging 18 yards a catch, 19 yards a catch. One of my keys was he has to be targeted more. You need to get that guy in space against the Nebraska team that was picked apart. By Illinois. Luke Altmaier, 21-27, 4 touchdowns. 4 touchdowns. Chris Long, 2 catches, 18 yards. Dymere had 2 for 35. Ian Strong, not much of a factor. 1 catch, 10 yards. Kenny Fletcher, 3 catches for 8 yards. Coaching staff, by the way, they're on to the whole tight end thing. You need to figure that out. Because in that 3rd down, when we got 4 shots from the 2-yard line, they were ready for that. Another key that I had yesterday, after our performance against Washington with 3 drop passes that were sure touchdowns. Ian Strong, Kenny Fletcher, and KJ Duff. Ben Black, by himself. You got behind the second. And nobody's there. Drops the ball. Now, this being said, I'm glad that he was getting more targets. You need that speedster in there. Give the defense something to think about. Maybe they're not really paying attention to him. Not a lot of film on him. We have 2 catches for 54 yards. Big play kind of potential. Take it to Haas at any time. Dropped a huge pass. Situational football in those moments. That's a touchdown there. You kick the 42-yard field goal. Just right there is 10 points, not to mention momentum shifts that influence the outcome and how the game plays out the rest of the way. It's one thing if Nebraska went in there and Dylan Raiola, was 20 of 30, 267 yards and 3 touchdowns. And their big wide receiver just dominated. It wasn't the case. This was a winnable game. Defensively, we're going to throw roses at the defense because one of the other keys was this was a game that if the defense was going to find themselves as far as pressuring the quarterback, knocking Dylan Raiola around a little bit, we said this in the preview, Raiola will tend to miss high or wide. Big, strong, athletic quarterback who's a terrific passer of the football. But you can disrupt him a little bit. he's going to miss. A little bit, usually a little bit high. Receivers are good at high pointing the ball, but that's usually how he misses. They did their job. They got 4 sacks. Jabome, Aaron Lewis, Jordan Thompson, Keontae Hamilton. Good job. You got well against a really good Nebraska team. Offensive line is okay. Flip Dixon, interception. Coaching. This staff drives me nuts. Within the same game, they can look like an elite staff and at the same time just throw it all away by head-scratching decisions. Now, a lot of controversy surrounding why didn't we take action against that touchdown by Kyle that wasn't a touchdown, and Coach explained in the postgame, well, they told him that it wasn't a oh God, you just listen to the refs. Oh yeah, he said it wasn't a touchdown. These refs are historically bad, especially when it comes to Rutgers. Just shockingly bad in the past. Sitting in section 124, sometimes I just couldn't believe it. We're missing those opportunities. And I talked about this last night in my rant against Washington. Was that last drive or maybe the drive before? I think it was the last drive. Washington's trying to move the ball down the field into field goal position. Washington receiver, might have been Buffs. Can't remember who it was. The ball literally hit the ground. They showed it on the big board. And we're sitting there, why isn't this being... Are you kidding me? So Coach, after the game yesterday, would you waste the timeout in the second half on that call? Dude, you're at the 2-yard line against Nebraska on the road. And you're going to not take a chance at getting a touchdown from a coach that, by the way, usually runs out of first down timeouts by the start of the second quarter. Are you kidding me? That's what you got? We're not that much. We're not more talented than Nebraska. It's not going to be just about how you scheme and culture, and if your mind is right for the game. You're going to have to be right in situational football, and they weren't. Their fourth down your fourth down offense is terrible. Whether it's the botched field goal attempt or you're inside the 5-yard line trying to score a touchdown, you're terrible. Figure it out. We should have had more stretch plays. Kyle to the outside. That's where Nebraska's defense is weakest. That fourth down play at the 2-yard line, that's another one from Ethan that was almost picked. I don't know what he was thinking there. Daimia had a little spin move to go inside. If he had another second or two, he would have been open. But, I mean, that play had no chance. These plays have no chance. If you said going into the game, we're back to Coach Shiano football, 2 block punts, you hold Dylan Raiola to 14-28, an interception, 164 yards. I'd say, huh? I wouldn't believe it, but that's pretty good work. I hope we won the game. And what's pissing me off now is I'm hearing people say, well, we got Wisconsin, that's going to be a win. Really? Based on what? Wisconsin's still a Big Ten team who got well against the Purdue team that's not very good. They didn't just win. They dominated another Big Ten team with almost 600 yards, something we will never, ever, ever do. We're just not built for that. 357 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. Are we even going to... I mean, we can't even have a game like that against Howard. That's why in these moments on the field, they have to understand, the coaching staff has to understand when to be conservative and when to get cute. We get caught in these ruts where we get predictable, and then we flip the script, and then we change philosophy. But at least we're not doing, the play this year that drove me nuts the past few years. Kyle 4 yards on first down, Kyle 3 yards on second down. It's 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1, and you're throwing deep down the sideline for a low percentage pass. At least we're not doing much of that. Nine times in Nebraska territory, we scored 7 points. They're going to have to work on their schemes, play calling, and situational football, and fourth down when you're in the opposition's territory. Because this absolutely could be a game that we lose against Wisconsin like last year, 23-14. And Gavin, we had 3 of these last year. We're in Wisconsin territory. Throws a ill-advised pass. Winds up being an interception. At that point, a winnable game wasn't winnable anymore. So there's things to work on this week. Haven't heard anything about injuries, either coming out of this game or going forward. Nonetheless, we'll be going through some Wisconsin-Rutgers previews. Interesting day in the Big Ten yesterday. We'll go through a Big Ten recap. Everybody enjoy your Sunday, despite a loss. And we'll talk to you next time.